Let's see. Social media, eavesdropping the not so stimulating students, and here we are. I think we are live. Yes. And so let me make sure so we don't necessarily have any hiccups like we did yesterday with Nimcompooperi. Give me 1 second, beautiful people. So for everybody rolling in, I want to thank you all, especially if you were here yesterday. We good, bro. Appreciate you, fam, for helping me do that. So I want to thank everybody for coming out. Again today, if you're joining us, we doing another live on. We doing an encore. What we talked about yesterday. If you want to check out or see some of the content that we did yesterday, it'll be pretty much the same discussion, but of course you can't recreate everything. Our guy Quan should be able to go ahead and put it up so you can get some of the, backstory, if you want to say, to the conversation we had yesterday, because unfortunately the audio didn't come through. I want to thank and shout out everybody who was in the actual comment section and alerted me to the issue, as I thought it was just a Facebook issue, but it wasn't. So I do want to apologize to everybody about that. But today we're going to get back at it again. And because I speak what is in truth does not change much. So we're going to be here today and we're going to talk about the same thing. And today what I will do is, let me see, I'm going to go ahead at the start of this and see if I can find the credentials so people can just drop in. Give me 1 second, beautiful people. Boop, boop. Da, 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 da. Yeah, let me see. Stop live stream, copy streaming link. Okay. So I'll figure that out, but I don't want to hold up everybody's time because I know today is a nice, good Sunday, and we just want to get
Sunday fun day.
Yes, sir. And we are having fun today talking to you all because, again, these conversations we have amongst ourselves, but I think they're more important, more impactful, when everybody is having these conversations.
Because we always talk about community.
Especially from an honest standpoint.
Yes.
Because I think a lot of the times we censor ourselves. I asked the question one time in terms about what type of censorship would you prefer, corporate, state, or self-sanctioned censorship? And I think a lot of people would rather prefer state-sanctioned because it absolves the accountability and you get to pass that off. But a lot of us censor ourselves. And so what we are going to be getting into today is, again, this discussion about the not so stimulating stimulus check. We saw everything that went down throughout the course of this week, with reports coming out, which we'll get into later. Joe Biden back in the $600. Then, Trump comes out and makes his statement. So it was a real Young and the Restless type situation in
all my children,
in terms of just the complete pendulum swings that took place. And as we sit here today, we're still in limbo as it relates to the COVID-19 relief package. So with that being said, we're just gonna go ahead and jump into the first article. Like I said, we don't want to waste anybody's time, but we want to get into your boy Jim Crow Joe, Mr. I Said What It Is ×2. And so this is from Jacobin, written by David Sirota, who is a highly political, influential journalist himself. So this is Joe Biden's love of austerity, cut the stimulus bill in half. If there is First off, we're in the middle of a brutal pandemic during which millions are suffering. Yet, according to the new progressives demanding greater economic aid and stimulus negotiations, giving Democrats confidence to pull back on their demands and surrender to Mitch McConnell, Mr. Half Man, Half Amazing. If there is any consistent through line in Joe Biden's long career, it is his commitment to the ideology of austerity. He has obsessively pushed for Social Security cuts for decades, and he is stocking his administration with deficit hawks. And I want to, as we move and continue in this conversation, is everybody, wanted to have the conversation around him being a lesser evil. And when we talk about Social Security, we also know that that is a safety net, that is things that people have worked towards, put their money into.
And then make money taken from them to put into.
Exactly. And this is a man who wanted to cut that. Including today's announcement for the notorious Social Security cutter, Bruce Reed will be White House Deputy Chief of Staff. Biden has even threatened to veto Medicare for all legislation on the grounds that it costs too much. And as we know, AOC, Jimmy Dore, and a whole bunch of people are having a combative kind of back and forth right now as how people want to, navigate and move around Medicare for all. But just to keep in frame in the context, this man that we're talking about right here, right now, Joe Biden, is said that he will veto that legislation. He was the lesser evil. Now, in the willing down of the stimulus legislation, we see the first concrete example of how Biden's ideology can change policy in deeply destructive ways. As pain and suffering in crescendoing across the country, Biden refrained from aggressively pushing a bipartisan initiative for $1,200 survival checks. Indeed, at a time where there was a legitimate chance to flip some Republicans against Mitch McConnell and push for a more robust stimulus. As we jump down, read that again, just so it sinks in. Biden endorsing an initiative to slash the stimulus bill in half gave Democrats confidence to pull back on their demands for a much robust rescue package at a time when America faces rising food insecurity and poverty. His enthusiastic lauding of the final bill underscores the role he played. We jump down a little bit further. The last line of Biden's statement, arguably the most disturbing foreshadow of all, he is depicting the process which starved America for months and now skips on benefits as a terrific, quote unquote, model for the future. Notably, Biden's austerity ideology was not aimed at the $671 billion military spending package that was tacked onto the COVID rescue bill, which also included billions for Trump, Space Force, and new weapon systems. Instead, austerity was targeted at the part of the omnibus legislation that was supposed to help people whose lives have been destroyed by the pandemic. Biden's pernicious role in the episode that previews what we can expect when he takes office. After all, if you draw a Venn diagram of Biden's priorities and McConnell's priorities, the overlap is budget cutting zealotry. And Biden is building an administration full of precisely those kinds of zealots. Move down a little bit further, beautiful people. When it comes to budget politics, I spent the last year and a half of my life warning about the dangers of Joe Biden, particularly his brand of austerity ideology. And for the most part, few have seemed to care about it at all. In fact, Democratic voters happily rewarded Biden with their party's nomination, even after a series of ads and primary debates spotlighted him bragging about working with Republicans. Ooh, the Republicans that were all so bad. The Mitch McConnell, half man, half amazing, Lindsey Graham, the dumb idiots who apparently can't outwit anybody but the Democrats. But working with Republicans to try to slash Social Security. Perhaps Biden skated because he so brazenly lied, brazenly lied about his own record, and because austerity can be seen like such an esoteric and intangible concept. But now what we see, but now what Biden austerity means in practice, it means meager $600 survival checks instead of $1,200 checks in the same package that pours money into the Pentagon, gives rich people big tax breaks, and doubles funding for Congress's own private healthcare system. It means inadequate unemployment benefit in a bill that devotes $6 billion to making business executive their meals, their lunch, their dinner, their breakfast.
3 martini break.
Yeah, deductible, and $3 billion to tax breaks for landlords. Again, this is with a looming eviction crisis. If progressive advocacy groups, activists, and lawmakers do not call out and confront austerity politics head on, it is going to be a painful 4 years. They've been warned about Biden's ideology for a long time. The stimulus bill is the biggest warming of them all. And I'm gonna say a quick couple words before I go ahead and let you go ahead and dive in and give me what you think about this, not only article, but the situation of Joe Biden undercutting the $1,200 that was given previously to come to a $600 in relation with the Republicans, the big bad GOP. But I'll just say that, this is an issue because we're talking about a situation that is quote unquote radical as it pertains to the economy. We're talking about what we'll get into later is, unfortunately, we are seeing people persist on the idea of moving in incrementalism, in these tinkering around the edges when it comes to policy and when it comes to bringing about solutions. Nobody really wants to touch the core and what is the heart of America. And so what I say to that is that we have warned people here, Gilded Sages, eavesdrop. The larger society has warned people about Biden. And so what do you make of not just what I said, but also the fact that people have pushed back on this man, and now we're sitting here in a situation where he, the Democrat, who's supposed to be, quote unquote, as his campaign says, building back America, that he's approaching it in this way?
For me, Biden, in his record, I look at his character. When we look at his character, he always wants to be that hard man. He wants to be the strong man in the room. He wants to show that he's tough. You know what I call the Democratic Party and the baby GOP. So for me, Biden is the guy that wanted to be part of the good old boys club. The good old boys club said, no, we can't use you. He's the person that got picked last at every game. So he had to boast himself higher than he really is. And that's what you see with him in this relief package. But you know how the NAACP did him. They treat him like Marion Barry. The bitch set me up. They treated him like that. And you saw, or you heard in the Biden tapes, as I call it, him being a stern, pretending to be stoic, but a stern person that doesn't want to move on his issues and what he believes in. And this whole strong man, all you got to do is suffer like I had to when I was young. All you got to do is pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Is this 20th century rhetoric that we know doesn't exist. He had a post-World War II economy to grow into, and to morph into. That corporatism that he's representing shows the American people his priorities, or the priorities of his administration. And the priorities of his administration really is to, as you say, build America again, is to move away from China being a source of not only physical labor, but intellectual capital. he wants to build back corporate America, and you see a lot of corporatism. So you see that the priorities is not on the American people, the average American person on Main Street. Now, priorities is on getting corporate America to stop with so much corporate debt that we just call, some people call income. But he's also trying to get corporate America to pivot away from China, maybe to land in India. Good luck, because we still have to deal with the lithium that China owns. But he's not concerned with the day-to-day person who is suffering through the pandemic, not just because of how vicious COVID is, and we see how it's morphing into different strains as viruses typically do. We're also seeing with Biden that he does not focus in on the long-term strategy of taking care of your populace so that you can have a strong populace that can combat austerity, that has a unified vision of I'm suffering so that America can move beyond where we are now. I don't see that within his cabinet. I don't see that within his movements. He speaks unity on Front Street when he got the teleprompter in front of him. But again, when NAACP have a call with him, you see that, oh, I'm a nice guy, drop off. You see that Joe gets mad with constituents. It's like, if Joe is the lesser of two evils, then I'd rather have Trump. Because I'd rather have a guy that's evil in the front than a guy that's, oh, I'm gonna be nice to you. But then he take you in the back room and he break your knees. And that's what Joe is doing. He take you in the back room and break your knees. Don't vote for Trump, because I'm gonna help you. Or I won now. Y'all getting $600. But before I get off my soapbox with this one, I'm mad at leadership, period. Because we in December, right?
We in December.
When was the CARES Act?
Hold on, no, we in January.
Okay. When was
next week is January 1st, 2020.
Yes, but when was the CARES Act?
When?
March. So I'm pissed off that America is willing to have this conversation. $600, $2,000. God needed this money March, April, May, June, July, August, September. So we arguing over $600 versus $2,000. But people who are underemployed, they don't get
he argued over $1,200.
Who argued over $1,200?
Biden isn't even entertaining $2,000.
But Biden is, look, if we look at Biden, the Clintons, as well as the Obamas, they're corporate. They are corporate. So in their corporate state of mind with this whole, let's forgive student loans, they're not going to forgive $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 that people are really debt in. They talk $10,000 that you got to apply for. And so what Joe does and what Harris does is they ride on this social justice symbolism wave, but then they don't deliver on the other side. It's like, nigga, you reneging. You got spades in your hand. You reneging, son. Nah, you had some hearts. You run me my books, but don't nobody want to say it that way. We willing to do that to Trump in the court, but we're not running to go to Biden and Harris and go, nah, run me my shit, son.
Nah, and you brought up a good point, and you brought up a comment about the CARES Act, which was $2 trillion. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the actual breakdown of how the funding took place as it relates to the CARES Act, because unfortunately the CARES Act was a little disingenuous. A lot of people I know.
Disingenuous in what sense?
Disingenuous in the sense that it was portrayed to the American public as it was a bill for the people, that it was a bill that would bring about the equalizing of the economy. And again, it was lazily done because we had Donald Trump, who during his seat, while he was still in office, wasn't necessarily trying to be forward thinking. Unfortunately, Donald Trump in this current moment has outflanked progressives, because unfortunately progressives, like AOC and Ilyan and all of the
you talking about the squad? You're gonna get in trouble.
That's cool. That's
They'll call you a hotel.
Because what happened was they were capitulating to the establishment when it comes to Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Joe Biden. And again, we brought up that article, or I brought up that article, because specifically we have to understand that they capitulated to that, they co-signed that, and though they griped online, they ultimately did not fight behind closed doors to push and move that forward and use the leverage that they had to hold the bill up. Because this is what Donald Trump is doing right now. Unfortunately, to his own endeavors, to his own personal benefit, but I will also not act like all politicians don't do that, as he also provided cover for Nancy Pelosi and other Democrats to
basically take another route.
To take another route, but also blame the GOP, because
that is such an easy thing.
It's a very easy thing, because Nancy Pelosi went through unanimous consent, which she didn't have to. She could have constructed it in a manner where it didn't necessarily have to be voted on by each and every single last senator.
But again, 2000
proposal
that the GOP blocked?
Yes.
Gotcha.
She didn't necessarily have to go that route, but it's easy to go that route because you can always easily scapegoat the GOP, because you know at least one of them, statistically,
look at these racist white men.
Why you benefit off of these racist white men. But let me go ahead and bring this kids up. So, what y'all looking at right now, let me make it a little bit bigger for y'all. This is the $2 trillion CARES Act that everybody, once Donald Trump said what he said, it was like, look, we have something already written up. And then you have right here $300 billion in cash payments, and this is to the individuals, the bracket, right? Mm-hmm. And then you have $260 billion in extra unemployment payments, and then you have $43.7 billion in student loans and other. We know that is not part of the conversation based on Joe Biden as well as the GOP. Then you have large corporations down here at $425 billion. That is for loans, wages, benefits, contractors, airlines, as we talked about, apparently meals. Then you have under that, which is small business, that is $350 billion in new loans. And then once you go down a little bit further, you have state and local, which is $274 billion in COVID-19 response. And then when you get down here to the very, very, very bottom, you have public services. It says you see higher education, K through 12, family programs, block grants, state and local. Then you get $100 billion to hospitals. Then you get $20 billion to veterans. You see stockpiled equipment, drug access, and I'm gonna just go ahead and leave it up for a little second before What I would like people to understand in that is that, one, I need you all to understand that this $377 billion right here is, unfortunately, when we talk about businesses, I need people to understand that most people are sole proprietors and mostly individuals, because most people don't necessarily have the capacity to compete with consolidated markets or monopolies, which we're seeing on the rise due to wealth calcification, which is why I have a problem with this large corporations number, because I'll give it a 20% attrition rate in terms of actual small businesses versus people who have tried to survive within the economy, whether it be through gig jobs or whether it be through just trying to find a side hustle and maintaining their life. And again, I don't have any issue with people doing that and people surviving. I'm all for it, and I understand it, being a person who has had to navigate similar situations. What I am doing is trying to push up and help people understand that the life that we do live shouldn't be lived, because a lot of people want to still maintain and hold on to the argument that, well, $900 in a stimulus check is better than nothing. And what I would say to people, or what I would ask them to ask themselves is, how many more times do we have to say, well, something is better than nothing before we don't have enough to gain leverage? Because over time, you say to yourself, well, we get them next time. There, in this situation, won't be a next time. So based on, everything that was in the breakdown, what are your takeaways? How do you feel about how the money was dispersed, or versus what we'll get into a little bit later, the new proposal in terms of the COVID bill, just everything around the allocation of resources?
I just got angry. So, well, no, angry. Because vexed, as in confused and frustrated, which is causing anger. In the sense that when I'm taking the context clues that Inca said, because I can't get it right now.
What? Incrementalism?
Incrementalism, okay. Incrementalism seems to be a belief that just take it slow, take it steady. It's like, no, that's not how populations work. And it frustrates me that although it's not 900, 600, or 1,200, 2,000, people don't seem to understand that policy is generational. If you're coming at policy and you saying, well, we'll get them next time, when the fuck is next time? It may not be their lifetime. There are certain moments that you gotta, boom. And I do that on purpose. It's like, it's that quick. When you see it, you gotta run towards it. And what a lot of people are doing is that they pretending that they're millionaires and waiting. They pretend that, oh, I'm gonna fake it till I make it. Or they pretend that they're going to be able to hustle their way into being a millionaire. It's like, do you not know that most people don't start their businesses until their early 40s to mid 40s? That means you got to survive until then. Until most people don't become millionaires until their early 60s. But that also means that you have to have the framework that allows for entrepreneurialism. That means that people need to be able to get to venture capitalists, capital. Because we know that one of the biggest demographics for small businesses is Black women, right?
This is true.
And the reason is not that Black women as a whole want to be entrepreneurs, but because they don't get advanced inside of institutions the way they need to be to take care of the responsibilities that life has put on Black women because of the historical racism in America of taking Black men and separating the Black family. Am I making any sense, or am I just rambling at this point? Let me know. Okay, I'm making some sense. Go ahead. So what I'm getting back to though, because it's frustrating, you don't have the time, meaning the wealth, to wait it out. Coronavirus is not going to wait until we decide to get ourselves together before it drops more bodies. What we need our leadership to do, instead of having these petty little fights back and forth, to go, I'm great, I'm greater than you are. No, you're not. I'm greater than you. It's like looking at Mark Antony and Julius Caesar fight. It's like, bro, I don't care about that. The city needs bread. The people need bread. They need it now, not later. So when we look at that breakdown, you see the Biden-Harris, because CARES Act is basically the language framework that they're using for this next act. You see that corporations are the main focus, not people. Because even with the eviction crisis coming in, it's not a deal between renters and the state. It's a deal between the state and landlords. Because renters have no equity in the building in which they live. And what is that, 9.2 million people that's facing this eviction crisis?
Yes.
So with that saying, it's like it's not
give or take a few.
Give or take a few. There's 9.2 million renters who landlords are saying with the state, give them money so we can continue to house them. Not we're going to invest, or the state is not going to invest in the human capital of 9.2 million people so that they can not only be sheltered, but they can kind of get a foot up. And they can, because of the virus, be able to take care of the next month. Because when you look at the largest block of the individuals, we saw how people spent the $1,200. If they didn't have any income, it ran through it. They had some income, they took the $1,200 and paid off debt. If they had more advantage, they took the $1,200 and they put it in the savings, because the savings rate also went up to the $1,200. I think it went up 30%. So you see that Americans, not every American is going like, oh yeah, son, I'm about to get these new Balenciagas. No, people going like, no, I need this. And back to my point of the needing the health benefits. If you want to, because I know Jimmy Dore he's riding on AOC for hashtag.
Which he should.
Press the vote, push the vote. He's riding on that for Medicare for all, which Biden says it's not. But again, there's evidence, empirical evidence, because you know me, I'm an evidence-based guy. Empirical evidence that shows that if you take care of people, it's healthier.
Yeah.
But that's where I'm trying to show people, or I want people to see or be open to, that your political leadership is not in lockstep with the real economy, it's in lockstep with our financial economy.
Absolutely.
So that means that, to break it down, I'm gonna hop off my soapbox because I am frustrated. I am. It's frustrating. It's like, yo, if they're in lockstep with the financial economy, that means they are looking at the globe. They're looking at the EU. We just had Brexit. I showed you.
They came to a new deal, right?
Yeah, I just showed you that. I'm about to read it. The EU, Brussels and them came to a deal, but then you got Scotland or Sturgis with the S&P pushing for that. So you got Europe that's focusing in on regulating big tech, the European Commission wanting that tax money. The European Commission is going like, yo, y'all operating in our backyard, we want that money. Y'all need to break us off some. Then we got China, who has a bunch of intellectual property that they stole. I believe it now. It's like, nah, y'all was robbing.
They were robbing
Intellectual property that they stole, but that they're using to turn their service economy into a political economy. So they're going for Jack Ma. So they wouldn't go for their own. Do you really think they wouldn't go for someone else? They don't care. And if you don't care about your population, that's where China is using its soft power to come in. It's like, oh no, good speculation. What happened to the professors that were being paid by Chinese money? Because we wasn't willing to pay.
And who reported it? Wall Street Journal or Financial Times?
Oh, it was a left-leaning publication.
No,
so
I won't do that.
So my whole point is like, if you're not willing to invest in your people, somebody is.
And so, you just spoke about a lot. You just dropped a lot.
I'm frustrated.
I would encourage everybody to look up, the global politics. That's where this guy is focused. I do a lot of domestic politics as it relates to the United States.
You got to see what I pay attention to.
Yeah, I dibble and I dabble, but you highly focus on global politics. But as it pertains to the not so stimulating stimulus checks that are being debated, because when we initially made the video, we were under the assumption that the $900 was being passed.
$900 was the 2000.
Nah, so we're gonna get into that.
What?
It was
Where's $900 coming from?
It was $900. No, $600. I believe. I'm sorry. Less. Joe Biden advocated for $600. Republicans were willing to go with that behind Nancy Pelosi because we know both of them agree on, trickle down, very conservative economic policy. But when we get into Trump, he inserted himself into this. And I thought it was methodical and I thought it was funny in a lot of different ways because I know Donald Trump understands that people are just going to go anti because Donald Trump says it. So something that was actually sound and logical, when I watched the whole thing, his whole presentation, it's like, no, he said exactly what needs to be said. And again, I'm not about xenophobia, but at the same time, when he speaks to the idea of non-citizens receiving funds, foreign nations, whether they be Israel and all of these other people who have gotten they got 500 billion. Those are monies and funds that should be going to American people. So let's get into it a little bit. The boy Trump. Here's what happens if he doesn't sign a $900 billion.
You keep saying 9, bro. It's 6.
No, I meant to say that's where I messed up because it's $600 stimulus checks. But the total quote unquote package is $900 billion.
I got you.
So that ain't nothing for real.
Now we talking about global country.
So though Congress has passed the $900 billion COVID relief package, Millions of Americans are in danger of losing important benefits just after the holidays if President Donald Trump continues to refuse to sign a bill. The legislation would extend 2 pandemic unemployment programs and provide the jobless with 300 weekly federal boosts through mid-March. It would send direct payments of up to $600 per person. It will reopen the Paycheck Protection Program so that some of the hardest hit small businesses can apply for a second loan. The package, which will be the second largest relief deal after the $2 trillion CARES Act that Congress approved in March, which we just spoke about, which we just broke down, has also would extend eviction protection and enhance food stamp benefits. And just a quick thing, this eviction crisis that is looming, I want people to understand the severity of it because it will expedite and exacerbate a lot of the problems that we face, especially within the African American community as it pertains to violence and a lot of other deplorable behavior, because people are being forced more so into a state where you have to survive. And I think a lot of people will, as we see wealth classification expand, we'll see poverty expand in the same direction. And I just want people to keep that in mind as we continue this conversation, because it's not just about the stimulus checks. It is about everything that is in and around the whole economy, the fluctuation. Again, when we talk about transitioning presidential administrations, the ideologies that go with that, the uncertainty that, like you said, other global leaders have with that. But as we jump back into it, expanded unemployment benefits, more than 12 million laid off Americans could lose their unemployment benefits after this weekend if Trump doesn't sign the bill. And even if he does, they will likely suffer a break in payments of several weeks. That is devastating. I want people to understand, again, within the time of 4 weeks, once this snowball starts in terms of the pandemic, this is a thing that isn't just fixed through magic. The destruction of the economy has happened. These teetering, quote unquote, rolling shutdowns are toxic to the economy. I will say that it is a good endeavor to do once the disease first broke out, but once we get into it and we continue having these rolling kind of shutdowns, it is beginning to be non-beneficial.
Just a couple on that.
Go ahead.
I had a conversation last night. I had someone inform me, thank you, shout out, you know who you are, that Miami kind of don't give a shit. They was at dinner. And then, but California though, they're the 7th largest economy, is 80% shut down.
Top five in the world.
They got the views. They got in the world. They right, Texas right after them. But my whole point was getting down to your point about the shutdowns, is that the shutdowns isn't stopping. Again, you know who you are. You informed me that in LA, the Latino community is getting hit. So anybody who's facing poverty is getting hit, and they still, because they need baby formula, but we'll get to that.
Absolutely. And as we move down or back up a little bit, eviction protection, which I think is the most important thing, a Center for Disease Control and Prevention order that went into effect in September temporarily halted evictions through the end of the year. And I want people to keep in mind that that happened as a result of the CDC and not politicians understanding the severity of the situation, because the CDC understood that people being kicked out would exacerbate the issue of COVID, and not only COVID, but other illnesses that run rampant, especially during these times of winter.
You ran over a phrase and you need to repeat it.
Which one?
Are you telling me that the judicial, legislative, and executive branch failed to protect people, and that it took the CDC for them to protect people?
Absolutely.
Okay, I just wanted to make that for the record.
Because our judicial, legislative, and executive branches are all co-opted through corporations, and unfortunately, a lot of people don't necessarily.
You said we don't live in a democracy.
No, we don't.
You're saying that we are ran by oligarchs.
Absolutely.
you are offensive.
Absolutely. And I would even say it's anarchy, given the fact that the oligarchs create a facade that there is rule in law when there is no rule in law, and that the rewards go to the person who is willing to do whatever.
You know what you sound like? I'm the one in the cave of the allegory going, put up the shadows so they don't kill us. And you just going like, nah, son, the shadows ain't real.
The shadows ain't real, and the people going, look, right now we're in a moment in America where people are willfully ignorant. People are going to run back to the shadows. The people that we're talking to, our group, our comrades, they get it. They understand. But the rest of society who don't necessarily want to be on the logical, being aware and admitting reality, we have no time for those people. Right now, we need the people who are willing to accept reality and move within that reality. And again, I'm not even saying you got to think or be like me. You could be in opposition. As long as you're moving in reality, I'm cool with you. Because guess what? It's choose sides 2020. In 2021, we're going to go to blows. So it is what it is. And so the order, which was spurred by an executive measure Trump signed over the summer, applies to renters who meet a certain income requirements, have experienced significant losses of income, and made their best efforts to find rental assistance and pay their rent. Since the order does not cancel or freeze rent, all of the tenants' back rent will be due January 1 if the moratorium is allowed to expire. Without rent relief or an extension of protection, many struggling renters will face eviction. An estimated, to your point, 9.2 million renters who have lost employment income during the pandemic are behind on rent, or 23% of such renters, according to an analysis of Census Bureau data by the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. The relief package would extend the eviction protection to January 31 and provide $25 billion in rental assistance for those who lost their sources of income during the pandemic. I'll just read the last little part when he talks about state funds. Congress provided $150 billion to state and local governments to help them cover coronavirus-related expenses, which is garbage. We're talking about $150 billion spread across 50 states. That's laughable. But states have to use the funds by December the 30th. States are on track to expand all of the funds by the deadline, according to the National Governors Association survey of 42 states and territories. Most of the money has been used for health-related expenses, economic relief, education, and childcare, and government expenses. The package will give states and localities an additional year to spend money. So Donald Trump is inserted himself. Donald Trump has spoken some truths, and Donald Trump is, of course, like any other politician who moves in self-interest. As we discussed, I definitely think it was a deliberate, intentional move to try to, because he lost, run for 2024.
You stole my line. I was going to say Trump 24.
No, I'm about to say, you can break it down.
You stole my
line. And get into it, because I think he did that. And I think what people have to realize is that he is manipulating people who he understands would just go against him for the fact of it being him and not necessarily being invested in the reality of the situation. There's no reason that it shouldn't have been $2,000 from jump. It shouldn't have been an issue, or it shouldn't have been a conversation, because we should have been getting a monthly check, especially when we're talking about the richest nation in the world.
In history.
Because other nations have responded, and our border and brother nation, part of the team of the West, Canada, has responded I wouldn't say perfectly, but definitely far better as it relates to supporting the everyday average citizen.
Aubrey Graham is a perfect example of Canada being a hybrid of being the neighbor to the United States, but still underneath the British crown, meaning that they know how to deal with multiple identities. But to your whole point, this is where being blanketly against a politician does not serve you. And you know how I am. I'm a writer. Basically, I'm a feral animal. I want to be free to do whatever the hell I want to. That's not against humanity. That's with time. I want to be able to do whatever I want to, but time tells me I can't. That frustrates me. But I say it because writers and politicians aren't always in each other's favor, although writers are a part of politicians can't. Look at Greenwald right now. Glenn Greenwald. When you sit down and you think about things, though, Trump has been trying to get money to his people because that's how he feeds his base. His base is poor white people. Mm-hmm. That's his base. They need money too. They always need money as much as we need money. When I say we, I'm talking about ADOS. As much as, and the only reason I use ADOS is really good. You all have established a timeline. So, a very good timeline. Yeah, established that timeline, that demographic. He understands that people need money. They can't wait it out. To your point, people can't wait it out. Time does not move by someone who wants to make a decision. Politics doesn't move. When I say politics, I mean the fear of the city doesn't move when a politician is ready to make a decision. So the CDC having to step in and Trump having to step in with the $2,000 thing is another campaign speech. That's why I say you stole my line. Because Trump 2024 is really what's going to make the Biden administration have to move from its austerity base and its deficit hawk like behavior, because we have to look at and what made Trump still viable at this point. You got to wait until the inauguration to literally go from President-elect Biden to President Biden. Is because a lot of America was split at the poll, and a lot of America still didn't vote at the poll that was able to vote, and it's still split. So it means there's a lot of people in America that Biden has to win over. You won technically, but have you won emotionally? No, and no, you have not. So he has to make a move, and Trump knows this. So he goes on TV and go like, when the president does it, it's not illegal. He pulls a Nixon-like move and go like, look here, it may be my administration that signs over the $2,000 checks. And this is, again, where Trump is very savvy as a political player and a media consumer as well as a media pusher, is that he makes basically a campaign speech. Mm-hmm. And he makes his campaign speech because the headlines can go back to where Trump actually said we need $2,000 checks before this pandemic happens. And we all know how people like that. That makes him a Negrodamus. I'm going to call it Negrodamus, like Paul Mooney. That makes him a Negrodamus. He foresaw the future for broke people. He knew that they needed money. And Trump 2024 is really going to keep the Biden-Harris ticket honest. No. It really, you think it will? Because they don't have a choice, son. Why I say that? Because this is what America does. Are you underestimating their hubris and ignorance? To the fact that the way that the Democrats move, they never understood and wanted to acknowledge the fact that Trump is a manifestation of their, as Jacoby put it, austerity. Bro, when Trump was getting rid of Huawei, there was people in rural America that was upset because it was only Huawei that provided the price that they needed for broadband. When we talk digital redlining inside of urban Americas, we should also talk about the digital divide amongst the urban and rural. We don't have that infrastructure to deliver the broadband as we move into a digital economy that's needed to serve people in the Red Sea. We got to get past this coastal thinking that, oh, in the city, how I live is how everybody lives. It's like, no, everybody doesn't have access to broadband, whether they have the money or not. And in rural areas, there's still Black people. There are Latino people who do not have the same access as necessarily white people, demographically speaking. So if the Biden-Harris administration is not willing to see that divide, then we're going to implode because they're willing to have this civil fight of I'm right, you're wrong. It's like, for me, you know, me and my geopolitical is like something that doesn't make sense. You have we have external pressures and external realities that need to be faced beyond our individual hubris. I say it again all the time. The only people who gives a fuck about Americans are Americans. Everyone likes us for our market because we buy more than we actually do. We have a trade deficit. We'd rather buy products made outside of America than products made within America because we don't want to pay a high price for things. But we got to get past that consumerism thing and understand that China has nationalized and weaponized capital.
Yeah.
So even as we look at the corporations, it's like, bro, they use you against you. It's like, oh, so you want to exploit me? I'm willing to be exploited because I'm broke. I'm broke right now. I need it. So I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep running with it until I don't need it no more. And then when you stop pushing on me, after I got some money because I played humble, I played stupid, now I'm going to boss up on you. And that's what China is doing. That's how China is seeking their militarism. So it's like, as we move and we see that they're willing to go weapons high. And we see Turkey decide that they want to go with the Russian military system. And you see how China is inside of the Belt and Road Initiative, inside of Africa, and they also beefing with Australia. They just practicing to get to America. Okay. They're just trying to chisel at the West. If the Biden-Harris team doesn't see that, I don't give a fuck how diverse they look. It's like, you all are idiots. You Woodrow Wilson after World War I. Idiots.
So I'll put it like this. They may see it, but they don't.
They idiots then.
So what happens is, and again, you brought up a lot. What we're going to do next is look here at this breakdown of what is being proposed in terms of what we get as people, because I don't really care about anybody else.
That's funny.
Here's a breakdown of everything inside the $900 billion stimulus bill and what it means for the U.S. economy. Within hours, Congress is set to vote and pass the $900 billion COVID-19 bill and assistance for households and businesses, as well as the funding for the vaccine distribution and more. As discussed previously, the bill excludes the Republican priority of liability protections for businesses and other entities and left the key Democrat demand of state and local bailouts. In a nutshell, the new package extends federal UI unemployment with an extra $300 a week for all UI claimants for at least an additional 11 weeks. It also sends another round of stimulus checks worth $600 per individual per household, those making less than $75K or $150K for married couples, and gradually phases out higher incomes. The bill renews funding for PPP, Payment Protection Plan, to support small businesses and provide targeted aid to transportation and other hard-hit sectors of the economy. As we see a lot of industries falling off. I saw AMC, take a huge hit. They out here renting their theaters for $100. That ain't nothing. So I know y'all finna collapse. Y'all done. There's no coming back. That model is dead. Similar, especially when you got Amazon out here buying a studio.
In the West, though, but in China is booming.
Of course, because as we all know, China is what's catered to. Their audience is what's catered to, especially when we talk about media. But similar to the prior bipartisan proposal, $325 billion will go to small business support, including $284 billion for a second round of PPP grants. As we jump down a little bit further, as we all see the diagram, let me load that up, make it bigger for y'all. You see small businesses, $325 billion in transportation, 45, nutrition and agriculture, 26. You got child care, 10. Ooh, that's garbage. Unemployment benefits at 120. You got 12 for support for small banks that serve low-income and minority communities, 25 for rental assistance. Man, it's looking real dicey. Workers and households. Direct payments. The legislation will authorize a second round of economic impact payments following the checks Americans received in the spring and summer at a cost of $166 billion. Households will receive $600 for each adult, $600 for each dependent, instead of $1,200 and $500 respectfully for the first round. Jobless aid. Let's jump down. No, let me touch on this. Households whose incomes were too high to qualify or who added dependents in 2020 might not qualify for full payments immediately. And again, those weeks in time matter in terms of when you get your money, but they can request additional money as part of the 2020 tax returns they filed in early 2021. Jobless aid. Workers will be eligible for a $300 a week federal unemployment subsidy as with the prior aid package enacted in March. Gig workers and others who don't ordinarily qualify for benefits would be eligible for jobless aid. And you know our opinion over here on the gig economy. It's very highly exploitative. Rental assistance. The bill provides $25 billion for assistance to tenants in areas of their rent. It also extends until the end of January 2021, a federal eviction prohibition, which the incoming Biden administration may extend again. The Treasury landlords and building owners can apply on behalf of tenants, meeting the eligibility requirements, generally those who make less than 80% of the median income in the area. So that's the AMI. You need to look up the AMI of your particular area and see if you fall in that category. Have at least one person in their households who has lost a job and can demonstrate they are at risk of losing their home. Healthcare, the bill includes $9 billion for healthcare providers, $4.5 billion for mental health, as well as more than $1 billion for National Institutes of Health and Conduct, COVID-19 research. Schools, $82 billion for private K through 12, as well as colleges. Vaccines, let's touch the testing and tracing. States will receive $22 billion for testing, tracing, and COVID-19 mitigation programs. Of this $2.5 billion, will be sent as grants targeting rural areas and communities of color. Let's hop down here to the businesses, and just as y'all see, $20 billion is going to go to the vaccines, and including those sums, $300 million is directed to high-risk areas. Businesses, airlines, tens of thousands of airlines employees will get their jobs back in at least a few months under the new bill, which includes $15 billion to cover airline salaries. Let's hop down and real quick. The banks, this bill will provide $12 billion in support for small lenders, focus on low-income minority communities. Entertainment venues, example, AMC. The bill has $15 billion. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Independent movie theaters, live entertainment venues, and cultural institutions.
That's a lot.
That is not AMC. Farms. The U.S. agricultural sector for another multi-billion-dollar injection in the new relief bill, which directs $13 billion to crop farmers, cattle ranchers, and rural communities. The new aid will come on top of a roughly $46 billion that the U.S. Department of Agriculture projects the federal government will directly pay to the nation's farmers in this year. And I think that's good. We'll jump down to the economic impact. And again, based on cost estimates, the various provisions and applying corresponding fiscal multipliers, as we see the chart below, Bank of America, the new stimulus package will contribute to approximately 2.7 growth in 2021. The bank now expects more of the stimulus impact will be front-loaded in the first quarter, which we see here. These numbers. Blue, yellow, or gold if you like. This is the previous estimate. This is the new estimate. So, with that being said, they projecting 2.7% increase. I don't necessarily disagree with that per se. My biggest question would be if it would be sufficient to what we're facing as America, So, based on what I just read, what do you think about how this new $900 billion COVID stimulus is chopped up, and do you think it's sufficient, or do you think it will reap what the intentions are in terms of quote unquote stimulating the economy?
How about this? Some of those programs have received less money than Black Lives Matter, which has raised over 10 point something billion dollars as a single organization. So a single organization has raised $10 billion as a private organization at that. No, to answer your question, the short answer is no. This is not helping on the long term. These are band-aid solutions. And it's going to take, and again, this is why I'm always focusing on America as a whole. It's going to take America as a whole to really understand that we can't afford our infighting. A lot of that money that the states are receiving is because their hospital systems are overwhelmed. We knew earlier this year that coronavirus deeply affects those who have pre-existing conditions, meaning that those who have spent multiple years working without the ability to recover were some of the first casualties of the virus. That to me was a signal that we're not paying attention to our working people. And in America, we focus on work far more than we focus on the domestic life. So that means that our people who wake up in the morning or evening, who work, now this is where I remove the citizenship thing from it, citizen and non-citizen, documented and non-documented, native and non-native. Those who work have to take their physical energy and manifest that into monetary gain to take care of a family. And they literally don't have enough energy to do it anymore. So that means that America has to reprioritize its education system. As we see, again, things are becoming more digital. We have to have some infrastructure projects that will feed the long-term generational impact of America along with these programs. Again, we're still focused on corporations. We're focused on the needs of corporations, but those corporations, well, I'm not pointing fingers at the CEOs, because the CEO is one stakeholder. We got CEOs, board members, stockholders, and so forth. If we're not willing to re-examine how our capitalism is working, especially with crony capitalism, and is more about knowing people rather than being inside of a meritocracy, we're not going to affect anything. And what I mean we're not going to affect anything as in move the global position back to American exceptionalism or towards a multipolar world. And I keep bringing up the macro because as we look at the micro, we really need to see that it's the local that supports the federal. And we're seeing that the federal, and this is my biggest problem with the left, is that they want to do everything federally. It's like, if we look at the geographics of the United States, we all are in the same economies, we are in the same climates, we are in the same spaces. So the money that's going to one state, can kind of pocket it a little bit, especially if they got more affluent populations. But for some states, that money is gone. West Virginia, for example, they have a huge population that is relying on the state because there is no industry there. And that's why I keep focusing on is we got to have industry. We have to rebuild our industries. We don't have, because we're going again, the 20th century. We're going from an industrial population that de-industrialized, that became a service population, and then from a service population becoming a knowledge-based, when I say population, I'm talking economy, a knowledge-based economy. But we can't keep the knowledge out because there's literally infrastructure blocks. And COVID created the block of we can't be inside certain spaces. So that means that there's certain information that couldn't go out. And there's certain things that can't go out, and that's why we have these silos. So until America is willing to break down our silos because we're willing to confront the things that makes us uncomfortable, then we can move forward and the money can make sense. because the money don't make sense if it's still going after bad behavior. We're just putting a patch on bad behavior. And when I'm to contextualize bad behavior, wasteful thinking, not being resourceful, not promoting being resourceful.
From the consumer level and the ownership level. All
the way up. And it's because of that ideology and not necessarily facing, again, I keep saying it, a multipolar world. Our domestic policy is still believing that we're in American socialism. It's still believing that we got the money like we're in the 20th century. Like we have been fighting and rocking in Afghanistan for 19 years and been paying for that. We got to understand that we can't afford everything. And when Trump went to NATO and basically going like, I got to pay more, you can't just keep looking at it and go Trumpism. It's like, what is actually Trumpism?
Americanism.
That's what I'm at with it. We just not paying attention to what our money is going into, because it's going into lifestyle and not actual knowledge.
Of course, because America is mostly about lifestyle. I would agree that a lot of people focus too heavily on the federal, but what I will say, there are certain initiatives that must come from the federal in terms of
like what?
Moratorium, or I'll say alleviating the eviction crisis. I believe that's something that has to come from the federal level, because as we've seen states who absolve accountability, or an initiative like reparations has to come from the federal level, because again, people, when you leave it up to people to pick and choose, because the way American politics has evolved into this personality and race of just appealing and appeasing the quote unquote majority, though the majority is wrong in a lot of ways. When you leave it up to states, you leave a lot of gaps in terms of the effectiveness, because as you mentioned, when you do that, we all have to remember that though we are separate states, a lot of our issues overlap in something that happens in DC or something that happens in Virginia, using the metropolitan area for an example. As you know, when we catch a cold, 9 times out of 10 they gonna catch a cold too. Just based on the proximity and just based on how people commute and how people move around. I think certain things in tandem with the state, of course, should be done though and executed and mandated by the federal, so that everybody falls in line and in one accord, so that we don't necessarily have gaps in trying to build. Because unfortunately, in an ideal situation, I believe leaving it to the states will work, but that's a political dog whistle for, look, we're gonna keep shit the same, because I know maybe 13, not because I wouldn't even say half, maybe 13 people gonna do the right thing, and the rest of y'all are just going to kind of listen to your people, or you just gonna do what's in the best interest of yourself.
That's a principal agent problem, but that's where being aware of your needs and fighting for your needs come in, because it's talking about this in the not so stimulus package it's a bit draining. And what I mean by draining is that when you look at the factors and you look at what we're facing, and it's so easy to become overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. It's so easy to become overwhelmed because it's overwhelming. You're talking about families, we're talking about corporations, we're talking about futures. Because at the same time, we also have to pay attention to, just started off being 30. It's like most people reach their peak in their 40s and 50s as far as earnings. Where we want to earn from if the industries aren't staying up? Where can we earn from? Who are we want to earn from? That's why I don't believe in this, let's get rid of corporations. It's like corporations serve a purpose. Everyone serves a purpose for a reason. How are we using corporations? How are we using capitalistic principles? How are we using socialist principles? How are we using these competence and principles? Are we using them to say our moral support is superior to you with this theoretical framework that you have in your head that you're not going to bring up, that you just sit around with your friends and go like, oh, these other people are stupid because they don't think like me? Or are you willing to use your intellectual framework and come into a community and have a debate? Because the best ideas come from people who are willing to have open, honest debates. Like, I didn't see that perspective. That made sense. I didn't see it from that angle. That made sense. And what I fear is that most people want to be right, then they want to take care of themselves. It's like, you're not great. There's no such thing as a great person without a great team. Nobody is great on their own. Anyone that comes to me and say, I'm great by themselves, like, I know you a lie. I know you don't do anything for real. Get the hell out of my face, because most of those words didn't come out your mouth. Most likely came out somebody else's. You're just not saying their name. Move on. And that's the problem with the populists. Everybody wants to do it on their, not everyone. Most people want to do it on their own without understanding. No, you can't do it on your own. You won't do it on your own. And the Biden team shows you that the people he's putting in his cabinet are the people he's been rocking with for years. He doesn't care about how they've been received. He doesn't care about how the public works. Because once the public is no longer paying attention, they have to wake up day in and day out and deliver day in and day out. And that's what anybody, because politicians get a bad rep for that.
That is true.
But everyone who does a craft knows that most people just aren't going to wake up and do what it is they need to do to take care of themselves. So how do you win in America? Just do more than most Americans are willing to do, because you're willing to go into the future, quote unquote, take what's opportunities that are potentially there, meaning solving problems that other people don't want to solve, get well and good at that, so that people are willing to pay you, so that you get paid so often that you got to hire other people. If we're not willing to solve our problems, then we're also not willing to go where we need to go so that we can be where we need to be and want to be. Meaning, people have enough money that we don't have to beg the damn government to save us. 9 months after we needed it.
This is true. This is true. And with that being said, we're going to finish out tonight. I want everybody to enjoy the rest of their Sunday. We just wanted to come and have a conversation because our sound F10, because it let me down. But we back today and we got the sound. And if you still watching with us now, if you can just like the video, share the video, leave comments. I'm here on my Facebook. I'm trying to look at the YouTube as well, just to engage everybody. But if you can't do that to help us out, so we can have these conversations at a different level, challenge authority, challenge power, challenge the status quo, so that we can move forward, we would definitely appreciate that. And thank you to everybody who came out and joined us today. Dropped a comment in the chat and, just participated. We definitely appreciate all that. And with that being said, you all enjoy the rest of your evening, enjoy your family, and enjoy the rest of the holiday season. And much love to you all as we depart. I salute you.